Hey, good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to the stream. It is Wednesday, August 18th. I hope you guys are having a great week. As I have said in my last couple of streams that I've put together, back in the swing of things with school and a busy schedule going on, a lot on my plate, but I wanted to try to keep these videos coming, and I hope that you guys are finding them useful. I'm trying to give you guys some things to consider and think about as the school year has gotten underway, both for public schools and private schools, and even homeschoolers now are getting back into the swing of things. That these are items and issues that we're facing on a daily basis, and many of us that are in the fight with what is going on inside of public schools related to all these hot button issues and topics. Again, hopefully that you are finding this useful and helpful. Before I jump into the content that I was going to talk about today, I did want to, again, just one more time kind of plug some upcoming events that we've got going on this Saturday. As a matter of fact, from 10 to 12, I will be a part of a symposium, a conference, whatever you want to call it, with a couple of other presenters. We are going to be giving you some information that I think is going to be very valuable for you as the year gets underway. The Empowering Parents Conference, which I believe is going to be held at the Wyndham Hotel at the Indianapolis International Airport. There has been details that have been sent out on various different groups on Facebook: Purple for Parents, Empowering Parents, Brownsburg for Public Free Agenda Education, and whatnot. And so you can find that information on there. There's an Eventbrite link that you can link to for that. If you find yourself interested in attending and you're around Saturday morning from 10 to 12, I will be speaking. Alvin Liu, who has been a part of Unified Carmel and some things that are going on up in Hamilton County, he's going to have a fantastic message for you. He has been in the middle of this, guys. He has seen this before, dealt with it. He's got some great information about how to prepare yourself to meet with school officials, whether it be teachers or building staff, administrators, superintendents, that will help you prepare for how to go about meeting with those individuals. And then Mike Margison, who is a high school social studies teacher, currently teaching at a public school. He will talk to you a little bit about what it's like inside of public schools right now, searching for different alternatives. I know my message is going to be specific to identifying social emotional learning and critical race theory curriculum. And so really excited about that. Hope you guys can attend, and don't forget to fill out that Eventbrite link if you do want to reserve a spot. I don't know how many spots were left open as of today. I believe we were at about half capacity for what was available, but that may have changed even since earlier this week. So let's go ahead and jump into what I wanted to talk about today. As you saw, what are they teaching? When you think about what's going on in public schools today, I know that right now there's a lot of, debate and discussion related to masks and mask mandates, and that seems to be the flavor of the day. But at the end of the day, I think we need to really look at the foundation of, why we, entrust public schools with our children. And that is obviously to attempt to try to educate them. And, I always try to resist blanket statements across the board. I think that, as I've said in multiple videos before, I'm not a complete, I'm not a completely anti-public school. I think there is a role for some people where that fits, for them, and they're satisfied and pleased, and it serves their family and their children to be educated in the public school arena. But for a lot of people, it doesn't, right? And that's why I've been fighting for and advocating for choices and freedom, more unfettered access to choices, much like when you would go to a restaurant, you would just have all of these options, a menu of choices. We do that with food, we do it with clothing, we do it with houses and transportation. Why not embrace that with education instead of defaulting to a public school within a zip code that you happen to live in, right? And then that kind of being, the default way in which we go about doing this. And so, obviously, when we're pointing out and highlighting issues that exist in the public school system today, one of the bigger issues right now is what is being taught? What is this curriculum that we are being taught? And, we could go into this in probably a series of videos, but I'm going to try to condense it down into this message here today. And I got the inspiration for this. I came across an image that I found on Twitter last night that is from the area around, not the school district that I reside in, but in a semi-neighboring district pretty close by. And it was a snapshot of a slide that was up on the whiteboard or the screen for a 7th grade social studies class. And I really wish that on YouTube live I could screen share. I don't think there is a way to screen share, at least not that I've been able to find when you live stream. I know I can do it in a couple of other formats, but since I've been doing these through YouTube lives, there is no unfortunate way to be able to do this. But you can go to my Facebook page, Justin Spears 4 at Facebook, and you can find me, and you can find this image up on there. I posted, I believe, in the Purple for Parents group as well. And so what I thought I would do is kind of break this slide down. There's a couple of different things that I want to point out here. And then I want to really kind of bring it back to something that I wrote about in my first book, Failure, The History and Results of America's School System. One of the big inspirations that I used in writing this was a man named John Taylor Gatto. And that might be a name that you're familiar with. If not, I would highly, highly encourage you to Google his name and get into reading some of his work. I won't go into his background right now because it's just simply too much to go through at this point. But suffice to say, he was a public school teacher who had won a lot of awards as a teacher in New York. And he kind of had an epiphany, and realized that he was causing a lot of harm by being a part of the public school system. And so he wrote 2 really great works in particular, Weapons of Mass Instruction. And then the work that I wanted to use as inspiration here was Dumbing Us Down. And in Dumbing Us Down, he talks about what schools actually teach. And so I want to kind of pair that along with this image. So I want to kind of start off by going through this. And again, you can find this image online. If you want to pause the video, go find it, have it up as you're watching through this. It may help make a little bit more sense. So the image is a slide. I would presume it's a slide or something from a document that's posted up on the board for 7th grade social studies students. And there's 4 items listed on this. Number 1, and again, I'm going to kind of pick apart this as we go through it. NWEA periods 6 and 7. So right off the bat, we are less than, a month, obviously, into school. And already the kids are being subjected to standardized testing. I know my boys are both in public school. In our local school district, they have also already done iReady testing. And I know what they're trying to do. They're claiming that they've lost all this time and they need to try to get a baseline for where students are. Really what they want to do with this is they need to get a data point. They need to get a data point so that they can show growth over the year. And that's how the state, for a big chunk, will kind of monitor school progress is through increases in standardized test scores. So already right off the bat, we're hitting kids with standardized testing when they've got all of these other things going on, trying to get acclimated back into school after many of them having been gone for a while. Last year was kind of a wash. Not much got done, honestly. At least from my perspective and what I saw with my son, it was kind of just get through it, keep kids healthy. Let's showcase that we can do this. And now we're kind of getting back to brass tacks, right? We're getting back to operating in the way we were pre-pandemic, although you're still in the middle of it. And so all these other battles are popping up. And then this is where it takes a really bizarre turn. This is where we really start to see what I'm going to focus in on here. Item number 2 says, please go to the social justice page of website number 5, which we aren't given. We don't know what that website is. Presumably, it's something that is centered and geared on teaching the concepts behind social justice. It says, when it comes to our bias and social issues, how do we know what information to trust, believe, base our ideas on, etc.? The reality is that it can be complicated, but there are some simple ways to stay clear of much falsified opinions, fact, news, etc. So keep that in mind as we then go into numbers 3 and 4. Okay. Number 3 says, today we are working on fact versus opinion and Black Lives Matter dash definitions. So again, a lot to unpack right there. So I want to pause there for just 1 second and kind of talk about that content. And then I want to really bring in the last item and talk about how that relates to Gatto. So obviously, first and foremost is the idea that this teacher feels that it is justifiable to teach 7th graders about these issues related to social justice and information that you find online. And I would say that there's something within this that is noble, but is completely perverted from the way in which she or he is going about doing this, right? And that is, I mean, obviously, I think it is a good thing to talk about. How do we know what information to trust online? I do that myself with my students. When we go out and do research online, we talk about how to, for example, triangulate information, right? So you find it and then you verify it with at least 2 other sources before you can trust it and use it. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that whatsoever. I think that's great. But to do it in this form, using social justice as the basis for it, there's so much wrong with that. First and foremost is the idea that, and again, without fully knowing, but probably using a lot of really good teacher intuition, having been a teacher for over a decade, I probably have a pretty good idea as to what this source that they're using looks like and how it is presented to the students. And I know it's going to be presented in a biased manner itself, that the information that is going to be presented to the students to read about is going to be slanted and biased, right? And so there's that component to it. There's also this component to teaching social justice and how you tie that into critical race theory. Now, you might say, well, social justice and critical race theory aren't necessarily one and the same. And I would agree partly with that. I think you can have conversations about social justice without bringing in critical race theory. But here's where I think this does bring in critical race theory, and that is in the 3rd point, right? Today, we are working on fact versus opinion and Black Lives Matter. I mean, that Black Lives Matter is a poster child for critical race theory. There's been a lot of research that has been done to tie Black Lives Matter to a lot of the theories that are promoted in critical race theory. And so I do think it's absolutely appropriate in this position to say that this is something that is being taught, okay? And so obviously we heard a lot over the summer that, we're not teaching critical race theory. And, we're not going to teach about Black Lives Matter, and we're not going to do this, that, and the other. And here it is, right? Clear as day that this is being presented to these 7th graders. And then so the other component to this, as I transition into the last thing, is teachers and teacher unions and advocates, for teaching social justice and whatnot. One of the things that they were using to kind of combat the narrative of teaching CRT is they said, well, we're just teaching the standards, right? We're just teaching social studies standards. So I went back through and looked at the Indiana State standards for 7th grade social studies, and nowhere, not even in the wildest stretch of looking at 7th grade social studies standards, will you find anything related to social justice, specifically related to today. Now, there are some things related to race, and there are some, I could see where maybe you could make some ties, some connections to racial issues in certain societies and how that has then transgressed into where we are today. And, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with doing current events and talking about the world around them today. But as far as, actual social justice issues, there's absolutely nothing related to this in the 7th grade curriculum. And so this is, again, destroying the narrative that, hey, we're just teaching the standards here. And so I think what this does is I kind of go into number 4 here on this, and where you'll see this brought up with John Taylor Gatto and Dumbing Us Down is number 4 says they have a test on Friday. Quizlet, Europe, continents, oceans, and social justice vocabulary. And when I read that, I immediately, because I've read Gatto and I know him and I know education, I know teaching, and this is not education, it's teaching school. And you might go, well, what do you mean by that? And so Gatto, in the opening of Dumbing Us Down, highlights this. And I want to read just a little snippet of chapter 1. The opening of Dumbing Us Down is a speech that he gave when he accepted the New York State Teacher of the Year, I believe, back in 1991. And so he goes through this and he says that he doesn't teach English, even though he has a license that says he's certified to teach English. What he teaches is school. And he says teaching means different things in different places, but 7 lessons are universally taught from Harlem to Hollywood Hills. And I want to focus on just one, and I want to focus just at kind of the beginning of what he says with this, because I don't want to read the whole section in its entirety. That would be too long. But I want you to keep this in mind as you listen to what I just said, that these 7th grade students who are still getting their feet wet, still getting acclimated to being back in school, have a test on Friday that covers Europe, continents, oceans, and social justice vocabulary. He says the number one lesson that is taught in school is confusion. And he says this: a lady named Kathy wrote this to me from Du Bois, Indiana, the other day. What big ideas are important to little kids? Well, the biggest idea I think they need is that what they are learning isn't idiosyncratic, that there is some system to it all. And it's not just raining down on them as they helplessly absorb. That's the task to understand, to make coherent. And he says, Kathy has it wrong. The first lesson I teach is confusion. Everything I teach is out of context. I teach the unrelating of everything. I teach disconnections. I teach too much. The orbiting of planets, the law of large numbers, slavery, adjectives, architectural drawing, dance, gymnasium, choral singing, assemblies, surprise guests, fire drills, computer languages, parents' rights, staff development days, pull-out programs, guidance with strangers my students may never see again, standardized tests, segregation unlike anything seen in the outside world. And by that, he means age segregation. What do any of these things have to do with each other? And he goes on to talk about that more. And what he does is he so succinctly, and I love the way Gatto writes, I love the way he points this out. He goes on to talk about how school is structured and how curriculum is structured to confuse students, how nothing ever gets accomplished because what we are doing is conditioning our students on bell systems and to become obedient and to do this now and not worry about completing anything or building anything or pondering on this if you're actually in the middle of learning about something that you find interesting and the bell rings, you're to stop and move on to the next thing. We're conditioning our students to do it in that manner. And so the confusion part of this, and I love that list that he has there, because for 1 minute, put yourself in the point of view of being a 12-year-old 7th grader, and you see this slide up on the screen, and you see this on a daily basis. You go into these classes, 7 periods a day, 8 periods a day, whatever, and you're just seeing all of this information on all of these different subjects. And you stop to yourself and you say, why am I doing this? Why am I learning this, right? But what are you taught? Don't question. Do what you're told, right? You just simply do what you're told. You don't need to think about, why am I being asked to read this? Or why am I being asked to calculate this? What good is this going to do for me? I would rather be reading this or thinking about this. And you're told, no, you will do what you're told to do right now. So there's that aspect to it as well. And then we wonder why kids act out. We wonder why they want to take bathroom breaks. We wonder why they want to go out and walk the halls. We wonder why they can't sit in a desk quietly and pay attention for 55 minutes or whatever, right? And you can try to dress this up and code it with all this different flowery edu-speak about transitions and cognitive assessments and multiple intelligences and all this, that, and the other. It's all window dressing. It does nothing to help prepare a student and educate a child. It's just another way of imparting knowledge upon them so that you can test them on it and show that the student has made progress in remembering certain things. And at the end of the day, we'll pat ourselves on the back and say, look, our test scores went up. All right, little Johnny and little Jenny, they started here and then we were able to get them to here. But at the end of that class, at the end of the year, what are they going to know? What are they going to be able to do to make sense of the world around them, to understand their meaning in this world, right? Because kids, even at the middle school age, have these natural desires to ask questions and wonder, how do I fit into this world? And how much of what we are doing inside the walls of our public schools are preparing them for that, right? And look at what it's done. I mean, when you go back and look over history, children as early as the ages of 12, 13, and 14 were becoming productive members of society. But what have we done? We've extended childhood by keeping them locked inside these buildings for even longer, right? And so the disconnectedness of it all, in telling a child that you're going to learn this and then this and then this, and then wonder why they can't make sense of any of it or retain any of it, why we lose so much of what we so-called learn in our schools. And so again, go back to that slide, a test on Friday over Europe, continents, oceans, and social justice vocabulary. I mean, my goodness, if you're a seventh grader, you ought to be, what in the world does that have to do with learning and understanding anything related to ancient civilizations or geography or culture or whatever else the actual objective is of what they should be learning? If we're going to do this to them, at least try to keep it, on topic and on task. But throwing social justice vocabulary in there, what is that? It's just going to confuse them. It's going to frustrate them. It's going to make them bitter and angry and divisive. You're not doing anything to teach these children what true social justice looks like. You're trying to make yourself feel better. You're trying to make yourself look good to your peers and colleagues who are going to put your slides up in teacher trainings and say, look what this lady's doing down the hall, and yay, she's trying to teach social justice. She's trying to ask the tough questions and get kids to question their privilege and all this, that, and the other. And all you're doing is confusing and creating to the divisiveness that exists on this topic already. So at least do us a favor, stick to what you're asked to teach, and let the parents handle those things at home. You are not licensed to teach children about these issues. You're not hired to teach children about these issues. You're hired to teach them about the content of which you are licensed to teach them on. And being a social justice warrior is not one of them. So all of these teachers who are returning back to the classroom right now and are thumbing their nose at the parents in their community and even throwing their own administration under the bus, who stood out in front of the parents and said, we're not going to be teaching this. Whether you know it or not, Mr. and Mrs. Principal, it's happening in your building. And I think you do know it. You're just trying to play both sides of it, right? You're trying to appease the parents by getting out and say, oh, no, we won't be doing this. But at the same time, behind closed doors, you are wink, wink, nod, nod, or in some cases, pushing it to the teachers to give them the green light to go ahead and do this. And all it is doing is causing confusion. Our students, especially those most vulnerable, upper elementary, middle school, early high school, are being fed a bunch of information that is absolutely shaped by your perspective. And I think the reason that I get so frustrated and worked up about this is I see teachers on my Facebook page and my other forms of social media trying to lecture parents about civil discourse. And, oh, you can be against masks, but you need to make sure you watch how you talk around your son or daughter, because then they're going to bring that to school. Meanwhile, I log on today and I see a video of a teacher in Utah who absolutely berates her class about environmental issues. And I see teachers last year who are yelling down at students who refuse to, quote, wear their mask the right way. And then you have the audacity to tell me how I should raise my child and how I should talk around my child? Really? I mean, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I get what you think you're trying to do, but be honest with yourself for a minute. And I encourage educators, pick up some John Taylor Gatto, read through it, and then tell me you don't feel convicted that what you're doing is damaging, that the industry that you've attached yourself to is damaging children. And it's not you per se. I mean, yeah, there are bad teachers. There are teachers who physically, mentally, and emotionally abuse students on a daily basis. Just as there are bad cops, as there are bad everything in life. I think a majority of teachers are well-intentioned. I think they really, truly have the child's best interest at heart. But you're part of a system that is not allowing you to do that. Or if you're trying, you're fighting a losing battle. So you have to ask yourself, how long are you going to permit yourself to be a part of a system that is doing what this slide is showcasing is happening in a classroom? How long are you going to continue to tell yourself that it's not me, it's the system, right? And I get it. I understand it. It's a profession. Teaching has been turned into a profession. I don't think that it should be, but it is. And there are a lot of people who have dedicated a lot of time and money and effort, and they truly wholeheartedly believe in what they're doing. But look at the results. Look at what is happening pre-pandemic. Look at the state of our public schools, and you can blame it on money. You can blame it on politicians. You can blame it on curriculum. You can blame it on anything you want. The reality is this is what the public school system is. And it is failing a lot of families in this country. And it is high time that we embrace a competitive model that gives families a chance to reject this kind of thing more freely and openly, without having to get the runaround, without having to feel pressured, without having to have some kind of connection or money or status in order for their child to be given the best opportunity to be educated. You get one chance at this. One chance to educate a human. And at one point, it's done, and you can't undo it. And so we really need to have frank conversations within our educational communities about what is happening inside of our buildings right now. And quit shouting down at parents who genuinely have concerns about what is happening, and use this, we're the experts, leave it to us, and let us handle it. Because all you're going to do is drive a further wedge. All you're going to do is drive a further wedge between you and the communities in which you claim to represent. And when you back up and support this kind of information, like what I just went through, it does no good. This is indefensible. There's no way that you can look at this and say, this is what quality education looks like. And if it is, then we have serious problems. So again, guys, keep up the pressure. I know I've talked about what we need to do and how we need to do it. Okay. I do still in the long run think reform is futile, because I think no matter how upset we get, no matter what type of buttons we push, this kind of thing is still going to exist. But I think what it does as we do put the pressure on is it opens up more eyes. I think that is the one good thing for those who are out in the trenches, bringing this stuff to light and trying to hold schools accountable. I do think it is serving a great cause, and that it is bringing this to light to more people who are unaware of what is going on. And then that gives them the ability to say, okay, I want to withdraw from this. I no longer want my child to be a part of this, if this is what we're defining as education in America today, and gives them the ability to be able to pursue other options. And then all the while, we need to be putting our emphasis and energies behind creating those alternatives for parents, meeting all needs, both parents working in the home, broken home, single family, raised in the system, raised by a grandparent. No matter what the situation is, every single child should be afforded the opportunity to reject the public school model and choose a system that works best for them, no matter what that looks like. So we need to keep advocating for that as well. Okay, that's it for today. I'm going to wrap that up. Thank you guys so much again. Please let me know if you have any comments, feedback, suggestion of topics, things you would like for me to address or talk about in future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.